this is not a female-only conversation. So we're going to spend a few minutes here on the top talking about this, because if you just leave it to females, well, that means any male trainer training a female or someone who menstruates, like, then you're out of the loop on something that's really important going on in a client's body. And that's not a good place you want to be as a trainer.
Yeah, I think this is something that everybody, at least everybody that takes the time to know about what's going on in their client lives, like, this is something that we've always acknowledged, but didn't necessarily know, okay, what do we do? What do we do with this cycle, right? Even our good friend Megan Young, who was on here a couple of times, and with her, it's like, yeah, okay, we know it's a thing. How much of it matters? We know it. We know it. It's more than nothing, but it's not everything. And what are the things that you have to consider? And nutrition is part of that. The exercise selection is part of that. So I'm looking forward, as I always do, whenever guest hosts take over the show. I'm looking forward to, because typically, look, I listen to this podcast. I typically listen to podcasts in 2 times speed anyway. So you know me. I listen to this podcast in particular because I already know what the content is anyway. I typically listen in 3 times speed because
I'm just impressed you can keep up. I talk fast as it is. I listen to podcasts at 1.2. I can't listen to ours at 1.2 because I talk too fast. So anybody listening on a sped up speed, I am sorry.
So I can follow because I know what was said, and also because I hate the sound of my voice anyway. So when I listen to it in normal speed, I can't do it. So listening to Monica and Rachel, though, will be probably the first time in a long time that I'm going to bring this back down to regular speed and listen and just be a fan of the show.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think it's important on multiple levels, and I'm sure they get into all facets of this, but I think there's kind of 2 buckets that we're dealing with here. One is like the physical part of this. We know hormones are hugely impactful on our abilities on any given day from a physical standpoint, or are impactful. I shouldn't say hugely impactful, because I do think at times like we can take this information too far, right? Like, you still, if someone is in the worst part of their cycle, quote unquote worst part for lifting, it's not like they can't lift anything. Like, they may not be able to PR on that given day, right. But like, there's a lot of days for a lot of reasons. A lot of people can't PR, having nothing to do with their cycle, having to do with their nutrition, their fueling, their sleep. And by the way, all those things are affected by someone's cycle. So you have that element of it, which I know they get into, and that's something that Monica thought a lot about with the program that she launched. But I also think we spend a lot of time, and one of the principles that we talk about a lot on this podcast and have now for 204 episodes is training individuals, right? Like, we talk about the personal being more important than the training and the personal training, and understanding, and I don't say this flippantly, like, I'm not saying this dismissively, but like understanding someone's tolerance for giving them shit on a given day.
Right.
Like, understanding where someone is emotionally is really important as a trainer. And again, like, that could be something that's caused by stress from work, or, a fight with a spouse. It could be caused by anything, but because hormones play a big part in that, and the hormones have such a wide variance throughout the different parts of a cycle, like, understanding what your client is going through and where they are is going to help you more effectively break through to them and communicate to them as a coach. And I feel very comfortable saying that, because Rachel and I, when we were talking before she was recording, talked about how she'll have some clients come up to her before solid core class and just say like, hey, I'm in the throes of it right now. Like, my cramps are terrible. Can you please just not give me a hard time today? And like, something as simple as that, and understanding where a client is for any reason, but especially when it's something medical, I think is really important. And so I'm excited to hear what they talk about, not just on the physical side, but on the mental side, and how it affects their approach to working out, both as coaches and as athletes.
Yeah, 100%. You're always a good coach, a good trainer is always reading the client, is always reading their emotions, right? Like, we talk about having the analytical intelligence to know what the program should look like, the practical intelligence to execute the program the way it needs to be done on the given day, and then the emotional intelligence to be able to read your client and see, all right, what is it that's going to get you into the things that we need to do today? Or are you telling me that the things that I have planned for today are the wrong plan, right? So there's a ton to that, and obviously hormones have a lot to do with that, and knowing your client and knowing your client's personality. Like, for me, I can say that working with some of the females that I've worked with in the past, for me, it's always identifying what are the no-fly zones. What are the things that I have to protect my clients from themselves, right? Because I had the type of clientele that they're not going to complain. They're not going to be like, Chris, like, we got to back off today because whatever, right? They're going to be like, no, I'm dealing with it. Let's go. So I want to know, for me, what are the no-fly zones? What are the places where I have to protect my clients from themselves before they push themselves to a place where they're endangering something, right? Because sometimes if you get somebody who's ultra competitive, they're not gonna tell you that, you know, hey, back off on me today, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, we talked about that obviously with like Heather when she was on,
Right.
how you would literally cut the reps in half of what it was supposed to be when you programmed for her because you knew she was going to do double, and then that got her where she was going to be.
Exactly.
And I think that's also something that I know Rachel and Monica talked about, because both of them have talked about this in like social media posts, and obviously Rachel and I have had these conversations in our home all the time. But like for her, working out is something that can help her feel better physically, right? Like if she's got major cramps going on because she has endometriosis, and so like there are very painful parts of her cycle physically. And one of the things that helped get it to a much more manageable place was exercise. Well, there's, of course, at some point, diminishing returns. And so if you are working with a client who is like that as a trainer, and you don't understand that is happening, and they want to keep pushing because they think more is better, it is your job to, one, know where that diminishing return point is, and two, be able to communicate that in a way that they understand that and they feel that, and they don't feel like you're depriving them of something that is making them feel better and enhancing their life. And so, you know, we talk about these conversations being so important in so many different settings. I think to our podcast with Joel about getting to know new clients and understanding them. And there's obviously, anytime you get into any medical information, but especially something as personal as someone's cycle, like there's going to have to be an element of trust there. And this is where, like, you know, talent is one thing in the training field of being super knowledgeable about, you know, the sciencey stuff. But to me, the talent of a great trainer is always going to be topped by, like, the number one thing that can make someone great is their ability to communicate, because they're going to be able to understand what their client needs and give it to them in a way that if you can't have those conversations and earn the trust of the people that you're working with, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have, like, you're not going to be able to deliver any of it.
For sure, yeah.
Thanks for checking out this video. If you like it, we got more. Make sure you subscribe right here on YouTube, and check out our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, or even our website. It's got everything there, all the links you could possibly want. Go check it out, trainwiththebest21.com.